I was born in Michigan, and for the first 8 years of my son's life, I thought I'd protected him from the ugliest truth our family ever buried. Our child still asks why the maid who saved him never came back, so I said the truth. The lie protected my son from a dark reality, but his question forced me to choose between his innocence and my own conscience. The truth, I told him, didn't just explain why she left. It ripped open a painful scar in our family's history, destroyed my marriage, and turned me into the villain in a story where I thought I was doing the right thing. Please listen to my story and tell me in the comments section if I was right or wrong, because this decision didn't just shatter my son's innocence. It cost me my husband, turned my own parents against me, and left our family so fractured that my children haven't spoken to their cousins in 2 years. My son Daniel was 4 years old when Rosa came into our lives. She wasn't just a maid or a nanny. She was the warmth that filled our cold, perfectionist household. My husband, Marcus, and I both worked demanding jobs in Detroit. I was a corporate lawyer putting in 70-hour weeks, and Marcus ran a successful medical supply company. We needed help, and Rosa was recommended by a friend whose own children adored her. The moment she walked through our door, something shifted in our home. She had this gentle presence, this way of making even the most mundane tasks feel like adventures. Daniel latched onto her immediately. Rosa was from Guatemala originally, though she'd lived in the United States for almost 15 years. She was in her early 40s, with kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled and hands that were always busy, always creating something. She taught Daniel Spanish words while they folded laundry together. She turned vegetables into funny faces to make him eat his dinner. She sang old songs from her childhood while she cleaned, and Daniel would follow her around the house, trying to memorize the melodies. Within months, she wasn't just our employee. She was family. Daniel loved her with the pure, uncomplicated devotion that only small children can give. My parents visited often back then. My mother, Carol, and my father, Robert, were traditional people who believed in order, structure, and maintaining appearances. They'd built their life on following rules and expecting others to do the same. They approved of Rosa at first because she kept our house immaculate and Daniel well-behaved. But I noticed the way my mother sometimes looked at Rosa, the slight tightening around her mouth when Rosa would hug Daniel, or when Daniel would run to Rosa first when he got hurt. My mother never said anything directly, but there was always this undercurrent of disapproval, as if loving our housekeeper too much was somehow inappropriate. Marcus and I were grateful for Rosa. Our lives were chaos, and she was the calm center that kept everything running. She worked Monday through Friday, arriving at 7 in the morning and leaving at 6 in the evening. On weekends, we tried to be more present parents, but even then, Daniel would ask when Rosa was coming back. He drew pictures for her. He saved his best stories for her. He trusted her completely. The accident happened on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I was in a deposition that ran late. Marcus was in Ann Arbor meeting with a supplier. Rosa had picked Daniel up from preschool like she did every day. They were at our house, and Rosa was making Daniel a snack in the kitchen. Our house was old, built in the 1920s, with original fixtures that Marcus and I loved for their character but never properly updated. The gas stove was one of those fixtures. Beautiful, vintage, dangerous. Rosa was heating milk for Daniel's hot chocolate when she smelled something wrong. Gas. Strong and immediate. She'd turned on the wrong burner, one we rarely used, and the pilot light had gone out months ago without us realizing it. The kitchen was filling with gas fast. Rosa told me later, much later, that her first instinct was to turn off the burner and open windows. But Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table, already getting drowsy from the fumes. She realized he'd been breathing it in for minutes while she'd been focused on the stove. Rosa didn't hesitate. She grabbed Daniel and ran. She didn't stop to turn off the gas. She didn't stop to open windows. She just ran with my baby in her arms, through the living room, out the front door, down the porch steps, across the lawn. She ran until they were on the sidewalk, far from the house. Then she called 911. Then she called Marcus. Then she called me. I got the message while still in the deposition. My phone was on silent, but I saw it light up with Marcus's name over and over. I excused myself and listened to his voicemail. His voice was shaking. There'd been a gas leak. Daniel was okay. Rosa had saved him. The fire department was at our house. I needed to come home immediately. The drive from downtown Detroit to our neighborhood usually took 30 minutes. I made it in 18. When I pulled up, there were 2 fire trucks, an ambulance, and 3 police cars outside our house. Neighbors stood in clusters on the sidewalk, watching. Marcus was standing on our lawn with Daniel in his arms. Daniel was crying, scared by all the commotion. Rosa stood a few feet away, talking to a firefighter, her hands shaking. The fire chief explained that we'd been minutes away from a potential explosion. If Rosa had tried to turn off the stove or open windows instead of getting Daniel out immediately, if she'd wasted even 30 seconds, the buildup could have reached a spark from the refrigerator motor or any electrical source. The house could have exploded. My son could have died. Rosa's quick thinking and her priority of getting Daniel to safety first had saved his life. I hugged her. I thanked her. I cried. Marcus did the same. The firefighters called her a hero. The police officer taking the report noted her decisive action in his paperwork. Everyone agreed that Rosa had saved our son's life. Daniel clung to her even after Marcus and I arrived, his small arms wrapped around her neck, his face buried in her shoulder. She was his protector, his savior, his Rosa. We couldn't stay in the house that night while they aired it out and inspected all the gas lines. Marcus booked us a hotel. Rosa came with us. She stayed in the adjoining room and sat with Daniel until he fell asleep, stroking his hair and singing softly in Spanish. I remember watching them through the connecting door and feeling this overwhelming gratitude. This woman had literally saved my child's life. The next day, Wednesday, we were cleared to return home. The gas company had inspected everything. The pilot light was relit. The leak was fixed. Everything was declared safe. Rosa came to work as usual on Wednesday morning. Daniel wouldn't let her out of his sight. He was clingy and anxious, normal after such a scare. Rosa was patient with him, holding him when he needed it, distracting him with games when he got too worried. My parents came over that evening to check on Daniel. They'd heard about the gas leak from Marcus and wanted to see their grandson. My mother brought Daniel's favorite cookies. My father brought a new toy truck. They fussed over Daniel, and he soaked up the attention, finally starting to act like himself again. Rosa was cleaning up after dinner when my parents arrived. She greeted them politely and then excused herself to finish her work in the kitchen. I was sitting with Daniel in the living room when I heard my father's voice from the kitchen. He was talking to Rosa. I couldn't make out all the words, but his tone was serious, formal. I heard Rosa respond quietly. Then I heard my mother join the conversation. I got up and walked toward the kitchen, wondering what was happening. My parents and Rosa were standing by the sink. Rosa's face was pale. My father was holding some papers. My mother had her arms crossed. The air in the room felt heavy. I asked what was going on. My father turned to me and said we needed to talk. He asked Rosa if she could give us some privacy. Rosa nodded and quickly left the kitchen, heading upstairs where Daniel was now playing in his room. My father explained that during the incident, when the police officer was taking the report, Rosa had provided her identification. The officer had run her information through the system as part of the standard report filing. My father had contacts in local law enforcement from his years serving on various city commissions. He'd made some calls to check on details of the incident, concerned about his grandson's safety. What he'd discovered was that Rosa's work authorization had expired 3 years ago. She was undocumented. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. Rosa had been with us for 2 years. She'd never mentioned any visa issues. I'd never asked. I'd never thought to verify her work status. She'd come so highly recommended, and she'd been so perfect for our family. It had never crossed my mind to check her papers. My father continued. He said that the police report was already filed. Rosa's information was already in the system. If immigration authorities decided to follow up, which they sometimes did with public reports, Rosa could be deported. My mother spoke then. She said this was a serious problem. She said we could be held liable for employing someone without proper documentation. She said we needed to protect our family, especially now when there was already a police report with our address on it. My father said they'd consulted with an attorney friend that afternoon. The attorney's advice was clear. We needed to terminate Rosa's employment immediately and distance ourselves from any potential legal complications. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This woman had just saved my son's life yesterday, and my parents were telling me to fire her today because of an expired visa. I argued. I said Rosa was family. I said we owed her everything. I said there had to be another way. My father's expression hardened. He said I was being emotional and naive. He said the law was the law. He said if immigration came asking questions and we were still employing Rosa, we could face serious fines, even criminal charges. He said our careers, our reputations, our ability to provide for Daniel, all of it could be jeopardized. My mother added that it wasn't just about us. She said Rosa was in danger too. She said if Rosa stayed and immigration found her, she'd be deported anyway, but we'd all suffer in the process. She said the kindest thing we could do for Rosa was to let her go now, quietly, before authorities got involved. She could disappear, move to another city, find work somewhere else where there was no paper trail connecting her to an official incident report. Marcus came into the kitchen then. He'd heard voices and came to see what was happening. My father repeated everything. Marcus listened, his face growing more troubled with each sentence. When my father finished, Marcus asked what I wanted to do. I said I wanted to find a way to help Rosa fix her status. I said we could hire an immigration attorney. I said we owed her that much. My father shook his head. He said we'd already consulted an attorney. The process would take years, cost tens of thousands of dollars, and had no guarantee of success. Meanwhile, we'd be openly employing someone we knew was undocumented. If authorities were already looking at the police report, that would make everything worse. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said he thought my parents were right. He said we had to think of Daniel first. He said we couldn't risk our family's stability. He said we'd give Rosa a generous severance, help her however we could financially, but we needed to end the employment relationship immediately. I stared at my husband. I felt betrayed. I felt sick. But I also felt cornered. My father was a retired judge. He knew the law. My mother had always been pragmatic to the point of coldness, but she wasn't usually wrong about practical matters. Marcus was looking at me with this pained expression, clearly hating this decision but convinced it was necessary. I said I needed to think. My father said there was no time to think. He said every day Rosa stayed created more liability. He said we needed to act tonight. My mother said she'd stay with Daniel so Rosa wouldn't have to. I felt the walls closing in. I went upstairs to check on Daniel. He was playing with Rosa in his room. They were building a tower with blocks. Daniel was laughing. Rosa was smiling at him with such genuine love. I watched them from the doorway, and I knew I was about to destroy something precious. I called Rosa downstairs. She came immediately, always so responsive, so eager to help. We went into Marcus's study. My father, my mother, Marcus and I were all there. Rosa stood in the center of the room looking confused and increasingly frightened. Marcus did the talking. He explained that we'd learned about her documentation status. He said we couldn't continue employing her. He said we were sorry, but it was over. He handed her an envelope with 2 months' salary in cash and said it was severance. Rosa's face crumpled. She started crying. She said she was sorry. She said she'd been trying to fix her papers. She said she had an attorney, but the process was slow and expensive. She said she'd never meant to put us in danger. She said she loved Daniel like her own child. She said she'd do anything to stay. My mother said it was too late. My father said the decision was final. Rosa looked at me. She actually reached out her hand toward me. She said my name. She begged me to reconsider. She said she had nowhere else to go. She said she needed this job. She said she needed Daniel. I couldn't speak. I felt like I was choking. Marcus said Rosa needed to leave tonight. My father said he'd drive her wherever she needed to go. Rosa wiped her eyes. She asked if she could say goodbye to Daniel. My mother said it would be better if she didn't. She said it would only upset him more. She said a clean break was kinder. Rosa made this sound, this awful broken sound. Then she just nodded. She went to get her things from the kitchen, the few personal items she kept there. My father followed her. I stood in that study and I hated myself. I hated my parents. I hated Marcus. I hated the system that put Rosa in this position. I hated that I was too weak to fight back, too scared of the consequences, too willing to let fear override love. Rosa came back with her small bag. She looked at me one more time. She said thank you for the 2 years. She said she hoped Daniel would be okay. She said she'd pray for him every day. Then my father escorted her out. She was gone. Upstairs, Daniel called for Rosa. I went up and told him Rosa had to go home early. He asked why. I said she wasn't feeling well. He asked if she'd be back tomorrow. I said yes. I lied to my 4-year-old son because I couldn't bear to tell him the truth. I couldn't bear to see his heart break. I put him to bed and he asked for Rosa 3 more times before he finally fell asleep. The next morning, Daniel woke up asking for Rosa. I told him she was still sick. He accepted this. Children that age don't question much. They trust. Friday came and he asked again. I said Rosa needed a few more days. The next week he started getting anxious. He asked every morning when Rosa was coming back. I kept saying soon. Marcus and I scrambled to find a new babysitter. We found a nice college student named Amy who was available afternoons. Amy was fine. She was responsible and kind. She was not Rosa. Daniel cried for Rosa. He asked why she didn't call. He asked if she was mad at him. He asked if he'd done something wrong. I told him no, Rosa loved him. She was just sick. But I could see him starting to doubt. Children sense when adults are lying. After 2 weeks, I told Daniel that Rosa had moved away to take care of her sick mother in another state. He asked which state. I said California. He asked why she didn't say goodbye. I said it happened very suddenly. He asked for her phone number so he could call her. I said I didn't have it. He asked if we could write her a letter. I said I didn't have her address either. He looked at me with these confused, hurt eyes, and I looked away. My parents came over for Sunday dinner the following weekend. Daniel was quiet and withdrawn. My mother tried to engage him with games and treats, but he wasn't interested. At dinner, Daniel suddenly asked my grandfather if he knew where Rosa went. My father said Rosa had decided to work somewhere else. Daniel asked why. My father said sometimes people need to make changes. Daniel said Rosa promised she'd never leave him. My mother said people sometimes have to break promises. Daniel started crying. He said Rosa saved him, and he wanted to say thank you properly. He said he'd drawn her pictures that he never got to give her. My father said he could draw new pictures for other people. Daniel screamed that he didn't want other people, he wanted Rosa. Marcus carried Daniel upstairs to calm him down. My parents and I sat at the dinner table in silence. My mother finally said Daniel would adjust. My father said children are resilient. I said nothing. I was thinking about Rosa, wondering where she was, if she was safe, if she'd found work, if she thought about Daniel the way he clearly thought about her. I wondered if I'd made the worst mistake of my life letting her go without a fight. Months passed. Daniel stopped asking about Rosa every day, but he didn't forget her. He'd mention her randomly. He'd see something that reminded him of her, and he'd get this sad look on his face. The college student Amy did her best, but Daniel never bonded with her the way he had with Rosa. He was more withdrawn, less joyful. Marcus and I told ourselves he was just getting older, becoming less outwardly affectionate as children do. But I knew better. I knew we'd taken something irreplaceable from him. Marcus and I started fighting more. Not big explosive fights, but this constant, low-level tension. I resented him for siding with my parents. He resented me for making him feel guilty about a decision he thought was right. We stopped talking about Rosa, but her absence was always there between us, this unspoken source of pain and blame. My parents acted like nothing had happened. They came over for holidays and birthdays, doted on Daniel, and never mentioned Rosa's name. I started dreading their visits. A year after Rosa left, I tried to find her. I contacted the friend who'd originally recommended her. The friend said Rosa had called her once, a few weeks after leaving us, to say she was okay but couldn't talk. The friend didn't know where Rosa had gone. I searched social media. I found nothing. Rosa had effectively disappeared, probably intentionally, to stay off immigration radar. I told myself she was safe somewhere, working for another family, maybe even happy. But I didn't believe it. I felt like we'd thrown her away after she'd given us everything. Daniel started kindergarten, then first grade. He made friends. He did well in school. He seemed okay on the surface. But sometimes he'd still mention Rosa. He'd remember something she taught him or something they did together. He'd ask the question I dreaded. Why did she really leave? Why didn't she say goodbye? I kept telling the same story. She moved to help her sick mother. It was sudden. She felt terrible about not saying goodbye. Daniel would nod, but I could see he didn't quite believe me anymore. He was getting older. He was starting to understand that adults don't always tell the truth. When Daniel was 6, we went to a restaurant for his birthday dinner. Our server was a Guatemalan woman around Rosa's age. She spoke with the same accent. Daniel stared at her. After she took our order and left, Daniel asked if Rosa was back from California. I said no, that wasn't Rosa. He said he knew, but it made him think of her. He asked if Rosa's mother was better now. I said I didn't know. He asked why we never tried to find her. I had no answer. Marcus changed the subject, asking Daniel what kind of cake he wanted. That night, after we'd sung Happy Birthday, and Daniel had opened his presents, he asked the question again. He asked it differently this time. He said he'd been thinking, and it didn't make sense that Rosa would just leave without telling him goodbye. He said Rosa loved him. He said she wouldn't do that unless something bad happened. He asked me directly, did something bad happen to Rosa? I told him no. I told him sometimes adults have to make hard choices and things don't always work out the way we want. He said that didn't answer his question. He asked again, why did Rosa really leave? I looked at Marcus. Marcus looked away. I looked at Daniel's face, so earnest and confused, and I made a decision. I said we'd talk about it later when he was older. Daniel said he was older now. He was 6. He was a big kid. He wanted to know the truth. I said some truths were complicated. He said he could understand complicated things. He started crying. He said everyone was lying to him about Rosa and it wasn't fair. He said he missed her and he deserved to know why she left. Marcus said it was late and Daniel needed to get to bed. Daniel refused. He said he wasn't going to bed until someone told him the truth. My husband got frustrated. He said Daniel needed to drop it. He said Rosa was gone and that was that. Daniel screamed that it wasn't fair. He ran upstairs and slammed his door. Marcus and I sat in silence. After a few minutes, Marcus said we needed to let it go. He said the more we talked about Rosa, the harder it would be for Daniel to move on. I said Daniel wasn't moving on. I said he was fixating on it because we kept lying. Marcus said I was the one fixating on it. He said I'd never forgiven him or my parents for what happened. He was right. Over the next few months, the question kept coming up. Daniel would be fine for weeks, and then something would trigger a memory, and he'd ask about Rosa again. Why did she leave? Where did she go? Could we try to find her? Each time I gave him the same weak story about California and Rosa's sick mother. Each time I could see him trusting me a little less. Each time the lie tasted more bitter in my mouth. My relationship with my parents was deteriorating too. I'd see them at family gatherings and feel this cold anger. They'd act like everything was normal. They'd ask about Daniel's school and Marcus's business and my cases at work. They never acknowledged what they'd forced us to do. My mother even made a comment once about how we'd finally found stable childcare with Amy, as if that was all that mattered. I snapped at her. I said Amy was fine, but she wasn't Rosa. My mother said it was time to move on. I said I didn't want to move on. I wanted to fix what we'd broken. Marcus asked me to drop it. He said I was holding on to something that couldn't be changed. He said my anger at my parents was causing problems for our whole family. My siblings were caught in the middle. My sister Emma had always been close to our parents, and she couldn't understand why I was being so cold to them. I tried to explain. I told her what had happened with Rosa. Emma said she understood it was sad, but our parents had been trying to protect us. She said I was being unreasonable. She said I was letting a former employee become more important than my own family. I stopped calling Emma as much. Daniel was 7 when he asked the question again, this time with more force. We were driving home from his soccer practice. He said he'd been thinking about Rosa a lot lately. He said he'd tried to look her up online but couldn't find her. He said his friend's mom said if someone doesn't want to be found, they usually have a reason. He asked me if Rosa was hiding from something. I kept my eyes on the road. I said I didn't know. He said I did know. He said I was lying and he could tell. He said he was old enough to hear the truth now, and he wanted to know everything. I pulled the car over. I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, and I realized I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep lying to my son about the person who'd saved his life. He deserved better. Rosa deserved better. I turned to face Daniel in the back seat. I said, okay. I said I'd tell him the truth, but it was going to be hard to hear. He nodded. He said he was ready. Now this is where I did something that I want you to advise me on if I was right or wrong. I looked at my child, who was asking his heartbreaking question again, and decided to finally tell him the truth about why Rosa really left. I want to know if you think a 7-year-old should ever have to carry that kind of difficult truth. I told Daniel that Rosa had saved his life during the gas leak. He said he knew that already. I said there was more. I explained that when Rosa saved him, the police came and took a report. I explained that Rosa had been living in the United States without proper papers. I tried to explain immigration and visas and documentation in terms a 7-year-old could understand. I said some people come to America to work and live, but they need special permission from the government, and Rosa's permission had expired. I said when the police came, they found out about Rosa's papers, and my parents were worried that we would get in trouble for employing her. Daniel asked why that would make Rosa leave. I took a deep breath. I said my parents thought the best thing to do was to let Rosa go so she could move somewhere else and be safe from the government finding her. Daniel said that didn't make sense. He said if Rosa was in trouble, we should help her, not send her away. I said I agreed with him. I said I'd wanted to help Rosa, but my parents and his father thought it was too dangerous. Daniel asked if I'd tried to stop them. I said yes, but not hard enough. I said I was scared, and I let that fear make me do something I regretted. Daniel started crying. He asked if we'd made Rosa leave because we were scared. I said yes. He asked if Rosa wanted to leave. I said no. I said Rosa had begged to stay. I said Rosa loved him and didn't want to go, but we didn't give her a choice. Daniel asked why I'd lied to him about California. I said I was trying to protect him from feeling sad. He said the lie made him feel worse because he didn't understand. He said at least now it made sense. He said it wasn't Rosa's fault. I said no, it wasn't Rosa's fault at all. Daniel asked if we could find Rosa now and bring her back. I said I'd tried to find her a year ago and couldn't. He asked if we could try again. I said we could try, but it might not work. He said he wanted to try. He said he wanted to tell Rosa he was sorry. I said he had nothing to be sorry for. He said I did, though. He said his grandma and grandpa and his dad did too. I said he was right. He asked why I didn't fight harder to make Rosa stay. I didn't have a good answer. I said I made a mistake. I said I was sorry. He said sorry didn't bring Rosa back. We sat in that car for a long time. Daniel cried. I cried. When we finally drove home, Marcus was making dinner. He asked why we were late and why Daniel's eyes were red. I said we needed to talk. I sent Daniel upstairs and told Marcus everything I'd just told our son. Marcus was furious. He said I had no right to tell Daniel without consulting him first. He said I'd undermined his authority as a parent. He said I'd made him look like the villain. I said he was the villain in this story. I said we all were. He said I'd poisoned Daniel against his own grandparents. I said my parents had done that themselves. Marcus said I'd crossed a line. I said he'd crossed a line the day he chose my parents' advice over doing the right thing. He said the right thing was protecting our family. I said protecting our family shouldn't have meant sacrificing Rosa. We fought for hours that night. It was the worst fight of our marriage. Marcus said I cared more about Rosa than about him. I said maybe I did, because Rosa had acted with courage and love when it mattered, and he'd acted with cowardice. Marcus said if I felt that way, maybe we shouldn't be married. I said maybe we shouldn't. The next day, Marcus moved into the guest room. We told Daniel we were having some disagreements, but we still loved him. Daniel said he knew what we were disagreeing about. He said it was about Rosa. He said he hoped we'd figure it out. I called my parents and told them I'd told Daniel the truth. My mother was appalled. She said I'd burdened a child with adult problems. She said I was being selfish and cruel. I said sending away a woman who'd saved my son's life had been cruel. My father said I was being emotional and irrational. He said we'd made the only practical decision. I said practical didn't mean right. My mother said I was ungrateful. She said they'd only been trying to help. I said their help had destroyed something beautiful. My parents stopped coming over. They said they wouldn't be around if I was going to be hostile. My sister Emma called me crying. She said I was tearing the family apart. She said our parents were devastated. She said I needed to apologize. I said I wouldn't apologize for telling my son the truth. Emma said I was choosing an ex-employee over my own family. I said I was choosing honesty over comfortable lies. Emma said she couldn't talk to me when I was being like this. She stopped answering my calls. I hired a private investigator to find Rosa. It cost $3,000. The investigator worked for 6 weeks and found nothing concrete. He found some possible leads, women with Rosa's name in other cities, but none of them were the right person. He said Rosa had likely changed her name, or was working under the table without leaving a paper trail, or had left the country entirely. I paid him his fee and told Daniel we'd tried but couldn't find her. Daniel was heartbroken all over again. Marcus and I went to marriage counseling. The therapist asked us to identify the core issue in our relationship. I said it was about values and what we were willing to sacrifice. Marcus said it was about my inability to let go of the past and my resentment toward his decisions. The therapist asked if we could both be right. I said no. I said this wasn't a both sides issue. I said Marcus had made a choice that betrayed someone who'd saved our son, and I couldn't respect that. Marcus said I'd made a choice to tell Daniel something that hurt him, and he couldn't respect that. We stopped going to therapy after 4 sessions. Daniel started having nightmares. He'd dream about the gas leak, but in his dreams, Rosa didn't save him. In his dreams, Rosa left him in the house and he couldn't breathe. He'd wake up crying, calling for Rosa. I'd go to his room and hold him. He'd ask if Rosa was mad at him for not fighting harder to make her stay. I'd tell him Rosa could never be mad at him. He'd say he wished he'd been older during the gas leak so he could have protected Rosa instead of her protecting him. I'd tell him it wasn't his job to protect the adults. He'd say it felt like it should have been. My mother called me 8 months after I'd told Daniel the truth. She said my father had been diagnosed with a serious heart condition. She said the stress of our family conflict was making it worse. She said I needed to reconcile with them for my father's health. I said I was sorry about my father's health, but I wasn't going to pretend I agreed with what they'd done. My mother started crying. She said they'd made the best decision they could with the information they had. She said they'd been trying to protect everyone. I said I understood their intentions, but I couldn't forgive the outcome. My mother said I was stubborn and unforgiving. I said I was principled. We hung up on bad terms. Marcus moved out completely when Daniel was 8. We were getting divorced. Marcus said we wanted different things, had different values, couldn't find common ground. He was right. I'd realized over the past year that I didn't respect the man I'd married. I didn't respect someone who'd choose safety over justice, comfort over courage. Marcus said I was idealizing Rosa and demonizing everyone else. He said life was complicated and I was seeing it in black and white. I said some things were black and white. Some choices were just wrong, even if they were understandable. We divided our assets, worked out custody, filed the papers. Daniel took the divorce hard. He blamed himself at first. He said if he'd never asked about Rosa, we'd still be together. I explained that wasn't true. I explained that sometimes people grow apart when they realize they don't agree on important things. I said his father and I both loved him, but we couldn't stay married anymore. Daniel said he understood. He said he was sad, but he got it. He said he was glad I'd told him the truth about Rosa, even though it hurt. He said lies hurt worse. My sister Emma got married a year after Marcus and I separated. She didn't invite me to the wedding. She said she couldn't have me there when our parents would be there and we weren't speaking. I sent a gift and a card. Emma never acknowledged it. My brother James tried to mediate. He said everyone was being stubborn and someone needed to be the bigger person. I said I'd be happy to reconcile if my parents acknowledged that what they'd done to Rosa was wrong. James said they'd never do that. He said they believed they'd done the right thing. I said then we had nothing to talk about. Daniel asked about Rosa less as he got older, but I knew he still thought about her. On his 9th birthday, he asked if I thought Rosa remembered him. I said I was certain she did. He asked if Rosa knew we'd tried to find her. I said I hoped so. He said he wished he could tell her he turned out okay. He said he wished she knew he still remembered her and loved her. I said I wish that too. I started volunteering with an immigrant rights organization in Detroit. It felt like the only thing I could do to make amends for what I'd done to Rosa. I helped families navigate the immigration system. I donated money for legal fees. I showed up at protests and city council meetings. Daniel came with me sometimes. He said he wanted to help too. He said maybe we couldn't find Rosa, but we could help people like her. I was proud of him for that. Marcus remarried when Daniel was 10. Her name was Jennifer, and she was nice enough. Daniel liked her. She didn't try to replace me, which I appreciated. Marcus seemed happy. I was still single. I'd gone on a few dates, but nothing serious. I couldn't imagine trusting someone enough to build a life with them after what had happened with Marcus. I'd learned that people reveal who they really are in crisis, and I didn't like what Marcus had revealed. My father died when Daniel was 11. The heart condition finally caught up with him. My mother called to tell me. She said the funeral would be on Saturday and I was welcome to come if I wanted. She said it coldly, like she didn't care either way. I went to the funeral. I sat in the back. I didn't speak to my mother or Emma or any of them. I paid my respects to my father, even though we'd been estranged, and then I left. Daniel came with me. He barely remembered his grandfather by then. The distance had erased their relationship. After my father's death, my mother reached out a few times. She'd call on holidays. She'd send cards on Daniel's birthday. She never apologized for what had happened with Rosa, but she seemed to want some kind of relationship. I was polite but distant. I'd answer her calls but keep them short. I'd thank her for the cards but not invite her over. Daniel asked why I didn't forgive Grandma. I said I'd forgiven her for being who she was, but that didn't mean I wanted her in my life. Daniel is 12 now. He's in 7th grade. He's smart and kind and thoughtful. He volunteers with me at the Immigrant Rights Organization. He's learning Spanish because he says he wants to be able to talk to the people we're helping in their own language. He still mentions Rosa sometimes, usually when we're doing volunteer work. He'll see a woman who reminds him of her, or he'll hear a song in Spanish that sounds like something she used to sing. He'll get this wistful look on his face. He'll say he wishes things had been different. I say I do too. Marcus and I are cordial now. We co-parent Daniel effectively. We don't fight anymore, mostly because we don't talk about anything of substance. Jennifer is pregnant with their first child together. Daniel is excited to be a big brother. I'm happy for him. I'm happy he has a stable situation at his father's house, even if his father and I will never see eye to eye on what happened with Rosa. My mother had a stroke 6 months ago. She's recovering, but she's frailer now. Emma called to tell me. She said Mom was asking for me. I visited once. My mother looked small in the hospital bed. She held my hand and said she was sorry we weren't close anymore. She didn't say she was sorry for what happened with Rosa. She just said she was sorry we weren't close. I said I was sorry too. I meant it. I was sorry that her fear and her need for control had cost us our relationship. I was sorry that she'd never be truly close to her grandson. I was sorry that she'd live out her life believing she'd done nothing wrong. Emma and I don't speak. James sends Christmas cards. Marcus's parents still see Daniel, but they're careful not to mention my side of the family. Daniel has cousins on both sides that he barely knows because our families are so fractured. My kids haven't spoken to their cousins in 2 years. The family gatherings that used to be regular parts of our lives don't happen anymore. Holidays are divided. Birthdays are separate events. Weddings and funerals are navigated with careful timing to avoid overlap. I think about Rosa every single day. I wonder where she is. I wonder if she's safe. I wonder if she thinks about Daniel. I wonder if she knows that telling Daniel the truth destroyed my marriage and my relationship with my parents. I wonder if she'd think it was worth it. I tell myself it was worth it because Daniel deserved honesty. I tell myself it was worth it because living a lie would have been worse. But some days I'm not sure. Some days I look at how fractured our family has become, and I wonder if I made everything worse. Daniel knows all of this. He knows the cost of the truth I told him. He's never once said he wishes I'd kept lying. He's never once blamed me for the family falling apart. He says the family fell apart because people made bad choices and wouldn't admit they were bad choices. He says he's glad I told him the truth because now he knows who he can trust. He says he trusts me because I was willing to tell him something hard instead of something easy. He says that matters more than anything else. But I still wonder. I wonder if a 7-year-old should have had to carry the knowledge that the adults in his life had failed someone he loved. I wonder if I should have waited until he was older, more able to process complex moral failures. I wonder if I told him the truth for him or for me, because I couldn't carry the guilt alone anymore. I wonder if I'm a good mother for being honest, or a bad mother for burdening him with adult problems. The Immigrant Rights Organization I volunteer with just helped a family reunite with their mother who'd been deported 5 years ago. The children were around Daniel's age when she left. They're teenagers now. They barely recognized her. Their relationship was awkward, broken by years of separation. I watched them at the airport reunion and I thought about Rosa. I thought about Daniel. I thought about how loss changes people, how absence shapes who we become. Those kids lost years with their mother because of a system that treats people as illegal instead of human. Daniel lost Rosa because I was too weak to fight that same system. I've written letters to Rosa over the years. I've never sent them because I don't have an address, but I write them anyway. I tell her about Daniel. I tell her he's doing well. I tell her he remembers her every day. I tell her he turned into a kind, compassionate person, in part because of the love she showed him. I tell her I'm sorry. I tell her I should have fought harder. I tell her I let fear win, and I've regretted it every single day since. I keep the letters in a box in my closet. Sometimes I reread them and cry. Daniel asked me last month if I'd ever stop feeling guilty about Rosa. I said I didn't think so. He said that seemed hard. I said it was hard, but it was also right. I said when we hurt someone, especially someone who didn't deserve it, we should feel bad about it. We shouldn't get to just move on and forget. He asked if I thought Rosa forgave us. I said I didn't know. I said I hoped she did, but I wouldn't blame her if she didn't. He said he hoped she did too. He said he wanted her to be happy wherever she was. The truth is, I'll never know if I made the right choice telling Daniel what happened. I'll never know if the fracturing of our family was worth his ability to trust me. I'll never know if I should have kept lying, kept the family together, even if it was built on a foundation of cowardice and betrayal. I just know I couldn't keep lying to my son about the woman who saved his life. I couldn't let him believe Rosa had abandoned him when the truth was that we'd abandoned her. Marcus says I'm still punishing everyone for a decision made years ago. He says I need to let it go. He says I'm hurting Daniel by keeping him away from his grandparents and extended family. Maybe he's right. Maybe I am punishing everyone. But I can't bring myself to act like nothing happened. I can't sit at a table with people who refuse to acknowledge that they did something wrong. I can't teach Daniel that family loyalty means accepting injustice without question. My mother will probably die without us reconciling. Emma and I will probably never be close again. Daniel will grow up with a fractured, extended family, missing out on cousins and grandparents and the big messy gatherings that some families have. He'll grow up knowing that his mother chose principle over peace, honesty over harmony. I hope he'll understand why I made that choice. I hope he'll respect it, even if it cost him something. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure about any of it. I'm not sure if telling a 7-year-old the ugly truth about adult failures was the right thing to do. I'm not sure if destroying my marriage over a moral disagreement was justified. I'm not sure if cutting off my parents and siblings was necessary or just cruel. I'm not sure if the pain I caused trying to honor Rosa's memory was worth it. I just know I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't keep living a lie. Please tell me in the comments section if I was right or wrong to burden my child with the difficult truth about why Rosa really left. Because this decision didn't just destroy my marriage. It cost me my parents, turned my siblings against me, and left our family so fractured that my children haven't spoken to their cousins in 2 years. And I'm sure my mother won't be inviting me to her next family event this year. I need to know if the price of honesty was too high, or if teaching my son to value truth over comfort was worth everything it cost us. I need to know if Rosa, wherever she is, would think I did the right thing. I need to know if Daniel will thank me or resent me when he's older and understands everything we lost. I need to know if I'm a good mother who refused to lie to her child, or a selfish one who prioritized her own guilt over her son's innocence. Please tell me, because I honestly don't know anymore.